Hi, healthy bakers. We're going to start our gluten-free, sugar-free, high-fiber, low-carb chocolate chip cookies by mixing our dry ingredients in a bowl. We've got 1 1/3 cup of flour swap, 1 cup of granular sugar swap, 1 1/4 fine Himalayan salt, 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/2 teaspoon baking powder. If you're doing these grain-free, go ahead and double your leavening. So we'll mix these ingredients together. We'll make sure no lumps remain and we have a nice even consistency with our dry ingredient. Next, we'll start our wet ingredients. We've got 1 egg swap. Remember, always mix your egg swap with 1/2 cup of hot water. Got 1 cup of butter swap. Now my butter swap is at room temperature and it's very well stirred. If you have trouble stirring your butter swap, just put the entire jar in a blender and go ahead and blend for just a minute, and your butter swap will stay nice and smooth for a couple months after a minute in the blender. Got 1 tablespoon of pure vanilla extract. Now we're gonna mix our wet and dry ingredients together until we have a nice, even, smooth dough consistency. And then we'll let our batter rest for about 5 minutes to let all that fiber absorb the moisture. You could absolutely use a stand mixer or an electric hand mixer here. And if I was doing multiple batches at once, I absolutely would. But I find for single or double batches, just this flat plastic spatula works really, really nicely. So we'll let this dough rest for about 5 minutes. And we'll noticeably see the dough thicken as it rests. So our grain-free dough has now rested for a good 5 minutes. It's nice and thick, and we're ready to add in our chopped walnuts and our sugar-free chocolate chips. Now I'm using Lily's brand. This is vegan, non-dairy, sugar-free chocolate chips. I'm using 1 cup. This is something you can play with as far as the amount. If you like a lot of chocolate, which I do, put in a lot of chocolate. And if you don't, just put in a little. These are chopped walnuts, 1 cup. And again, you can play with other nuts, and the amount of nuts can vary. I'm just gonna fold in my nuts and chocolate chips. Now I've got my oven heating up. For grain-free, I'm gonna bake them at 325 degrees. And for my whole grain cookies, I'm gonna bake at 375 degrees. Now I'm folding in my chocolate chips and nuts in my whole grain dough. You can see the dough is definitely not as thick or crumbly. Handles a lot more similarly to a regular cookie dough. Way easier to stir. Remember, our whole grain is gonna have just a few extra healthy carbs in it. Still lots of fiber. It's gluten-free, made out of oats and buckwheat and whole psyllium husk. It's a really nice, earthy, more rustic flour blend. I'm using my large cookie scoop. So these are gonna be nice big cookies. You'll see with the whole grain, it comes out pretty easily. I will have to press down my cookies though, because of all the healthy fiber in the flour swaps, your cookies won't spread like traditional cookies, so they do need to be flattened down. I find it easiest to just wet my fingers with a little water and press down my cookies. Okay, we're gonna bake our whole grain chocolate chip cookies at 375 degrees for about 12 or 13 minutes. For my grain-free cookies, since the dough is thicker, I'm going to make balls and then just press it. You have to shape your cookies a little bit more with the grain-free. We'll bake our grain-free cookies at 325 degrees for about 13 minutes. Once your cookies are done, move them to a cooling rack to completely cool. You can see our whole grain swap cookies are a little bit bigger, slightly more cakey, really nice interior. And then our grain-free cookies are slightly smaller, going to be a little more dense, a little more chewy, also crumbly, chewy interior. So good.